Hello, everybody. We're back with my friend Greg Crosby, and I'm going to start with a little story. Greg was one of my teachers in college in my undergrad religious studies program at Merrillhurst. He taught a class on the Amish. And then I ran into him again years later. He lives right in my neighborhood, and we've become pals. And the last time I saw you, Greg, we were having lunch in an outdoor restaurant, and a wasp flew up my pant leg and stung me 3 times.
I'm sorry.
That was that was
That
a
was,
fun story.
oh,
And so that was my little intro. Greg is so brilliant. I mean, I am so humbled around him. He teaches in China and Saudi Arabia. He told me the other day he's done Zoom classes with, I don't know, what did you say, like 10,000 people on Zoom or some crazy number like
uh,
that?
it, it was, it's been 17,500
Zoom?
for Zoom on the Chinese Zoom.
That's amazing. So that's all I'm going to say about Greg. I'm going to let him introduce himself. And Greg, I'm going to make you co-host because in a few minutes I'm going to have to step away for about 10 minutes and then I'll be back. So you have the floor. And would you
Okay.
like me to interrupt you and monitor the chat for you and ask questions throughout, or would you rather wait until the end? Or would you rather monitor the chat yourself?
Um, I don't think I can monitor the chat as I'm doing my PowerPoint easily. But I'm okay to accept questions at any given time or you do that, and I will have questions at the end.
I will do that, but at some point in about 15 minutes, I'm going to have to duck out for about 10
Okay,
minutes.
that's okay.
Okay,
I'll
perfect.
keep going. So I'm
All
going to
right.
set up my PowerPoint here.
All right. And then give us a little bit of an intro on you and your
I
work.
will. I will. So I'll just set it up here. So we
Okay.
got it. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Good. All right. So I come from a strong liberal arts tradition. Uh, I I will be integrating here anthropology, sociology, uh, therapy points of view. My background is adjunct in liberal art college and uh, therapist, program administrator, and I'm current in managed care and community mental health, and I'm currently in private practice doing supervision and a little therapy, maybe a small amount of 8 to 10 people a week. And then I do trainings. So much of my trainings have shifted since 2017 to international, in which I do online. Uh, it's good to be here today. I really appreciate Terry's uh, conception of this idea. And so what I'm going to get ready for the holidays. So what I'm going to do is go through like a 10-step process of doing this. And no one is perfect in it. You don't have to do all 10 steps at once. Uh, I think 80% of us do most of these steps, but it's helpful to review what they are. So this is a cartoon that is in public domain on Thanksgiving politics and by Dolly. And what we're going to be doing here is focusing on how we can navigate this turbulence that we are in. And I'm going to be doing like a 10-step method here. And you don't have to do all 10 steps, just one step will help break this apart and make it more, if it's turbulent, a little more ways, a little easier on how to manage the waters. So a short background is politically diverse Thanksgiving dinners have shortened, and this is from Science Magazine and the studies. And politically diverse dinners were 30 to 50 minutes shorter than politically aligned dinners with guests in 2018. So the more diverse it got, the shorter the dinners got. And this is in America. The political diverse 2020 dinners were 24 minutes shorter than 2018. So they even got shorter. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that we really need strategies going into this dinner. And I think it's important to think like Margaret Mead, you're entering a culture, let's prepare to enter the culture. And she's, of course, a great anthropologist. A little more background before the 10 points is 40% of individuals use smartphones or internet during family time reported. And this is in the Journal of Medical Internet Research. It's a peer-reviewed journal. 15% of the individuals use smartphones. I'm bringing this up during dinner. So I'm bringing this up now because it is a factor inside the family gatherings. Not only do we have to deal with the political differences that might come up and the family differences and emotions that come up, we have to deal with this this creates a disembodiment and an embodiment inside our Thanksgiving or our holiday gatherings when people or set individuals are really stuck on their cell phones. So I'm going to be addressing this because it is interconnected to dealing with the holidays. So if we're looking at the importance of preparation, anthropologists, when you enter a culture, and a family is a culture, a work group is a culture, a holiday is a culture, we need to develop some preparation skills. We say this in therapy as a needed ingredient to help navigate any turbulence you're going through. So A is personal preparation. Identify your negative triggers, things that set you off to specific people. Now, you often know, particularly in family gatherings or work gatherings, who they will be. So we have this pattern. And the content and the other variables, like television, excessive drinking, we need to focus on how are we going to respond to this, plus anything else coming up, and think about how you can respond ahead of time. So you need some preparation, and you might need to share it with other people before just jumping in. So that really helps us move forward with entering the room. So here are some key questions. When does your temper or irritation tend to flare up in these gatherings? And people have patterns. And you can often reflect on who is going to say what when, and then with whom and what content. So and also look at the importance of, is the amount of alcohol or other drugs a factor? And should you set a limit for yourself? So most of us just jump into this family gathering, but today without thinking about it, and that's where explosions can happen and unintended consequences. So I think just a little 3 to 7 minute preparation, and if you want to do more, that's okay. Regarding, I see entering a social gathering for the holidays, it's like you're forecasting weather report ahead of time and preparing, okay, is it going to snow? Where's the rainy sites? Where's the sunny sites? How do I navigate this? And then the important piece is it isn't all on the self. It's you have your own team, and you can select who you want to share this with ahead of time, of how you're going, what your triggers are, how you're going to work with it. Now, what we know through organization development and anthropology, also therapy, is if it is possible and you have a good enough relationship with the host, if you, to discuss suggestions about cell phone use, a political free zone in the party, and what you can bring and what you can and how you can help ahead of time. So it's so difficult to do it before you get after you get there. So one of the things, like, we're just approaching and I have permission to say this, and everyone on my wife's side of the family is aware I'm going to be talking about this, is that we have a fairly political group in Orange County where we'll be having Thanksgiving. And there is a general agreement to make it a political free zone. So the hostess, who is a very strong Maga Republican, is telling people no political discussions. And this will be the fourth year in a row she did this, pretty much out of necessity. And so things will happen. We just deal with it. But having this as a construct ahead of time, if it's possible to get, helps. And then you just have to deal with it when the dike breaks and have strategies. So if possible, talk to the host before the gathering, have a plan to deal with conflict. Who will do what, when, and to whom? And you huddle with the host. So what we know is there's always alternative topics other than politics, because we're multidimensional. We have work and hobbies and ups and downs of life and what is important to you. I really have found, particularly with this situation, is that preparation, if it's possible, can help guide it. And if you know the host and can talk to the host about your concerns and you trust the host, then it helps manage this situation. So number two is remembering linking themes are a key to connection. So here we are as a whole group of people in a social holiday gathering, whether it's Thanksgiving, a work situation, a family gathering during the holidays. And it's important to remember we have multiple roles, but many of us don't know the role we have. And we have other interests and roles, such as family members, friends, sports, interests, work. Tell stories about those identities. It's important to do this. So this is where the cell phone comes in. On my side of the family, I was I was at a holiday gathering for Easter where 3 people were embedded inside their cell phone and not looking up or talking to other people. I decided to ask to go over to each one and ask permission if I could talk to them. And that was very interesting because they really started talking. It was like they were locked inside their own cell phone. And one of the people were very different political belief systems. but they appreciated me going over and even said to me they would have never left their cell phone had I not come over. And and then we learned something very fascinating, that he works in the space program. No one knew, this is my cousin, I have 15 cousins, no one knew he was what he did. Uh, be open to connect and to link, and then to tell stories about it. Express collective gratitude. Now, this piece is really profound with Thanksgiving. What a wonderful holiday that is, not associated with gifts. And it brought up a notion for me of gratitudes inside Sonia Libersky's research on gratitudes. So a gratitude is very helpful with a story. So you need to tell a story about the gratitude. Not just say, oh, I really had a good time at, or she and I had a good time here, but tell a story about it. And the research shows with control groups that it reduces craving, depression, anxiety, and anger. That's pretty profound. And so that is a part of the clinical domain right now, and working with depression, anxiety, trauma, uh, general stress, uh, is that gratitudes are very helpful. And this can be built into a ritual, even around the table, where you tell a gratitude with a story. Um, Saying straight out gratitudes become more like a shopping list, but when they're attached to a story, it becomes very interpersonal and very empathetic. Oh, one of the hardest things is to be in parties where people are openly critical or backstabbing, sometimes in work functions, of other people in the organization. And so I have found it helpful uh, to talk to hosts when I feel like I have a buy-in with a host, just to talk about this, and about collective gratitudes. And this ties in with something Terry was saying at the beginning of, I teach a course called Amish Vegas Polarities of American Culture. I grew up in Lancaster, and so I've been doing some consulting with through community mental health centers with Amish, but they have an interesting uh, death ritual, a loss ritual, which is 15 sonnets. And the first first 8 verses of the sonnet are about your gratitudes towards the person that died. And then that opens up the last 7 verses, which are about your grief and loss. What I find often when we work with gratitudes is that once we set a foundation for gratitudes, it changes the nature of the conversation. And even in parties where it brings up more death and non-death losses after the gratitudes surface. I, from a standpoint of social psychology, it's we have a framework called common ground. And a common ground is an effective, we need this because of effective polarization. That's a term that social psychologists use when people talk negatively about political opponents, and it becomes like an us versus them emotional state. an I thou versus an I it. Social psychology research finds that there are many areas of agreement inside polarization. Now, some people are so heated up, they may not be able to find that in the moment, particularly if there's alcohol influence or other drug influence or just plain hot from anger and irritation. But it's important if you move in this realm to explore common things like healthcare needs, healthcare costs, costs of living. And this is where paraphrase is so important. Paraphrase is, I heard you say, is this true? So what anthropologists are seeing and therapists are seeing is that since 2012, with advent of the cell phone, paraphrase is getting diminished as a communication skill because we're so used to texting. And we rarely will receive, do you understand what I just said, in a text? We rarely would say that in email. And it's become a more reactive culture because we're mirroring the technology that we're spending so much time in. And the Center of Disease Control is estimating that the average American adult 18 through 64 is 6 hours and 34 minutes a day online, not doing work or school functions. So now we're going to go back to the body. An important piece working with attending gatherings is pay attention to your breathing. So I'm going to go over Herbert Benson relaxation method from Harvard. This was originally done in 1977 and published in the Relaxation Response because it showed that men, and now we know women, lower their blood pressure when they belly breathe. And you can do that right in the office. And they did this at the time because of the high levels of stress and high blood pressure in men. And it was an epidemic of heart attacks and hypertension in the late 70s so what happened with this is instead of developing a medical device, he found out the most effective way to work with this is a very simple one-step breathing method. And this is now in the Herbert Benson Mind Body Clinic at Harvard. It is a theme of working with all diagnostic conditions. So I'm going to just run us through this. If you put a hand on your chest right now and put a hand on your belly, like this, I'll just stand up. You are mimicking $3,000 to $5,000 of biofeedback equipment for free. So when your hands move, when your chest hand moves, that is thoracic breathing. So your cortisol increases, your sympathetic nervous system is on alert when you're in chest breathing. If you have mixed breathing with the chest and belly hand moving, you're doing chest and you're having the increased sympathetic nervous system of the chest breathing, the increased cortisol, but you're also having more diaphragmatic breathing that brings up that serotonin, and the parasympathetic nervous system starts working. If you just do belly breathing, you get all the serotonin, and serotonin is stored in your stomach lining. We have known that in the field of medicine since 1980. Gershon wrote, "The stomach is a second brain." And so 90% of your body's stored serotonin is in your stomach lining and released when you belly breathe. So, and then the stomach presses on the vagus nerve. So you can really change your nervous system, shift it in 30 seconds. If you do it for 3 minutes, if you have high blood pressure, it will lower. If it's lower blood pressure, isn't going to lower more. The good news here, though, is there's a one-step method that you can do. And you can do this right now. You can put, if you're in such a chair, you can put your arms behind the back of your chair. So you can do this at the Thanksgiving table. I see other people putting their arms behind the back of their head. That also works. And then the third, which you can do standing up, and I'll stand up to do this, is hands behind your back. And that's the at ease position. So it stretches your intercostal muscles, your lungs expand when these muscles on your side stretch. And it's a very helpful device in creating a way, creating space in yourself so you're not as reactive. So you can do this in standing up, sitting down. Many people do this in staff meetings. It's a very helpful, and it increases the blood flow in the prefrontal cortex by 10%. So you can do this with eyes open. If you have been in social gatherings, you probably would not close your eyes. But if you have unresolved trauma, many people with unresolved trauma do better with their eyes open when they breathe because flashbacks can occur more frequently. So basically, the breathing method has been very helpful for me and for many people I work with attending gatherings where they're not sure of what's going to happen. Helps keep a sense of composure about you. And you won't hurt yourself if you do it longer than 3 minutes, but you get effects really within 30 seconds of the serotonin moving from the stomach lining to the bloodstream. Number 6 is appreciate the food. This is one of the many places around the world look at our Thanksgiving and say, we're glad America is doing that. And it is truly kind of and Canada does that as well. It's a core symbol of social identity. We have many, many memories, which we may want to bring up if this is a family Thanksgiving and or a friend family Thanksgiving about memories that we can talk about here. It brings up resonance. Food is a big part of our life and how we respond and we deal with food. And this is where it's so important, going back to the host, to check in about what can I do with this food situation we're about to get into and see if there's any kind of agreement that the two of you can have. And it's a time to connect, to check in with each person on how they're doing, and to tell stories about the ups and downs and the interests and concerns in your life. And I find that when the host has reached out to set some boundaries, particularly about a political free zone before you get there, this can really happen more. People really want to talk about this because we've gone through one of the most profound worldwide loss experiences with the pandemic, which is just a few years ago. And many of us are still getting COVID. And loss and gratitudes, I think, are all interconnected. So we need each to work with the other. So, and the importance of just learning about someone is so important in these parties. Like my cousin, who knows I'm talking about this, he has written me several times since this Easter gathering that thank you for sitting next to me. I'm so used to being alone, and now people know what I do. And now not every time does this work out. I'm, there are so many variables. You can get the refusal of the call here if you sit down with someone and say, no, I don't want to talk or chat. I just want to do my game on the cell phone. But it's important to have a try and then respect boundaries if someone says no. Seventh, this is from Margaret Mead, right at the Museum of Natural History in New York. There is a section about self-care, a brief comment in this beautiful section of the museum about taking breaks when visiting a culture. A family, a work, that's a culture. We need to take breaks, even if they're short, 5 or 10 minutes. When many people report a change in themselves, and I certainly feel that, entering a family system within minutes. It's like I revert back to another period of time. And so a break means going off by yourself or with someone just to remove yourself from the group, because some of these gatherings can be all day. Even if it is a couple hours, it's useful to do that unless you have responsibilities that you can't move away from. But I find that realizing that you could potentially look for that helps people as they enter this family piece. And break might be just go outside or go in a different room. Many people take breaks as a result of going to the restroom. But when we're in a group, often setting for hours and hours and hours, it's helpful to help you reset, to go back in. I now have several grandchildren, and one of the grandchildren, that was a big holiday social gathering, came up to my daughter, their mother, and said, it's too loud, I'm going to take a break now. She was 3. I want to hold my doll, my stuffed animals. And she went down and did that. And then she came back. We all have periods like that, even if we're an adult. So this is a picture of our brain. And if we just go in to this, I'm going to teach, you probably have seen this before, the brain in the palm of your hand. It is a way to teach neuroscience that Dan Siegel taught to a psychiatrist he was training, and then to the general public. And I'll go over this. And this is like your brainstem, the palm of your hand, and the spinal cord goes right into your brainstem. And the thumb here is the amygdala, which is all the emotions. It's all emotions are detected here. And then they're sent to the hippocampus to record the memories of these emotions. And so if we get really flooded with criticism or anger or irritation, and we don't have a way to process it or problem solve it or distance ourselves, the prefrontal cortex here, which is our knuckles down to the top of fingernails, gets stuck. And so that's where you get into arguments or avoidance. And then you literally flip your lid. So the fingers go up like this. And all of us have moments where we do this. Now, breathing and all these steps help reduce lid flipping inside, particularly the breathing, taking breaks, preparation beforehand, all helps with that. So this is all, when you experience an emotion and like someone is, let's say, critical, you feel criticized by that person, within 1/125th of a second, according to Reed Wilson at the University of North Carolina, your hippocampus brings up memories of past criticisms in general. So this is why it's normal to be reactive, but if we have a strategy ahead of time, we have a way to not be so surprised by our own turbulence. So here we go with cell phones affect interactions. And I think this is interplaying so much in our family systems now that I think therapists just have to be asking about how much are you using your cell phones and what impact, if any, do you think this is having on you and other people? So this has been a big change in the last 13 years, and particularly in how children are viewing the world, because they're spending more time in this at an early age than any of us. The WHO, World Health Organization, has a new study out showing that there is an increase since 2012, which is the advent of the smartphone, of nearsightedness by 20% across the globe. That's huge. And there's in that younger generation of children 18 and under, because they're spending so much time doing this. So inside these family gatherings, as I mentioned before, you may have a few people, and they may be kids or they may be adults. Like in my situation, it was an adult, but there were also two kids doing this. So absorbed in their cell phone, no one was talking to them. And then that interferes with the dynamics and the tension. Now, you need to get permission to have a discussion. And you might get refused because cell phone use is a strongly personal issue with very tight boundaries when we move into this. And this is where these three communication skills that therapists are seeing are being reduced since we have been relying so much on communication, on email and text messaging, and shifting away from in-person and phone calls or FaceTime. So behavior description is describing what occurred, like, oh, you interrupted me 3 times, or I made the doctor's appointment yesterday. You tend to just be talking about adjectives, like it was a really bad day, or it was a really good conversation, but you leave out the details. And paraphrase, I heard you say this, is that true? One of the key things I think leading to misunderstandings in text messages and in emails is no one's paraphrasing, and they do assumptive decision making. And this carries over into in-person social gatherings. So we have to actually teach now in therapy many people how to paraphrase. And I was working with someone who was in their 60s who said, "Oh my gosh, I used to paraphrase all the time and now I don't, and I'm getting into all this trouble with the communication that I'm missing." And the research on communication is if you don't paraphrase a semi complex thought, you're 80% of misunderstanding it. And because it has to pass through your filter. And same with a perception check, checking how someone is feeling. Like, I think you're upset right now. Is that true? Now, you need buy-in with this, and you don't have to be a therapist to do it. But these three skills, behavior description, perception check, and paraphrase, can really help create space inside conversations to debrief it. And we're losing it. It's like it's becoming an endangered communication species. When I was working in managed care, I actually proposed that the computer keyboard act like a biofeedback sensor, and if we were too stressed, we couldn't send the message. That was voted down, but I'm still thinking about it because there's so much misunderstandings between people and departments based on assumptive decision making. So Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation, you probably have heard this anxious book, or this wonderful book, is a social psychologist. And when we're in this virtual world, where it's a non-physical presence, so we have dissociative anonymity, which is detachment from one's actions. And it's communication without time, with a time lag. Whereas if we're in the real world, our communication is in sync with what's happening, and it's known. And so what happens with this is we need to remember this key message on research, that 7% of the research is embedded, is sent by words, 38% by tone, and 55% by language. So with this in mind, we have this very complex dynamic if we're in a family situation. And I think we're not used to all of this input because so many of us are 6 hours and 38 minutes on this other thing a day, according to CDC. And if you're a kid, it's more, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're mid-range countries, by the way, according to the WHO, and use of internet and smartphones. We're mid-range. So in the real world, we have this physical presence in real time. It's you can get one-to-one or group communication, and there's a high bar for entry and exit. Whereas in the virtual world, you can enter and leave at any given time. Now, I do think family gatherings on Zoom can be very good, and we certainly have had those during COVID, and my family scattered throughout 3 countries now and 8 states, and we get together. But we need to do the same thing on Zoom calls that we would attending an in-person gathering. We need to set this up with the host and set ground rules. And I find them very, very meaningful and helpful. I'm so thankful for Zoom. It would have been a very desperate, difficult situation on top of what was a very difficult loss experience for us during COVID without Zoom. And this is part of a family gathering, and there, now to set this up, there was a discussion about putting away your cell phones at dinner. Otherwise, this may have looked very different. And there was an agreement ahead of time. Now, if you can't get that agreement, you just deal with it in the home. I mean, at that moment. But this is the missing step, I think, is thinking, can we prepare for this? As opposed to just rush into it, just like an impulsive text message. And then lean on friends and family for support. And I think you need to be scanning your body for how you're doing. Like, am I upset? Is this going well? And then if you know you're moving into a person that tends to trigger you, have hand signals or something to get your other buddies or one other buddy to be with you, if that would be helpful. And then paraphrase to give space. I think I just got through 3 days of 8-hour trainings in China. And I have felt this before, what I'm about ready to say, whenever I'm translated. Translation gives me space in the room to regroup. I wish there was a translator at every Thanksgiving table. It gives us space before we respond. Our breath can give us that space. It helps give us that space if we put our arms behind our back, as an example. And then finally, we need to debrief because there is a very human piece to try to find meaning about what happened and just try to figure out what did happen. How are we going to deal with this next time? So this is a good time where to practice behavior description, paraphrase, perception check, and look for the meaning and the meaningful moments. And I think some of the most meaningful moments for me is when the people start sharing their stories about their lives, their ups and downs. But the introverts can really change the dimension if you work on gently reaching them out with agreement to, okay, is this okay to sit down and talk to you? Because once they talk to you, that might open them up for other people, or other people sit down with introverts in the room. So debrief is so important because we're in search for meaning, as Viktor Frankl would say, and we're trying to make sense out of what is or isn't happening. So that is my presentation. I'm open for questions and comments.
Thank you, Greg. That was quite amazing. I'm still blown away by your statistics in the beginning, and I'm wondering a couple things. Is it possible for you to let us have access to your slides or your notes?
Yes,
Could you send
yes.
that to me and I'll send them to everybody?
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay,
Sure.
because the statistics about the diverse dinners getting shorter, that blew
Mhm.
my mind. And that's what we were just talking about in our previous discussion, as there's my timer for us to switch to questions. Perfect. Is that, that's a strategy for us if we know we're walking into conflict to arrive late and leave early. So it was a perfect segue. You came in right on top of that discussion with actual literature to support that, the more, at least in today's political climate, these diverse gatherings are shorter. Um, you also talked about setting up boundaries. And before you got here, one of the questions that came up is if you say to your family, okay, here are going to be the boundaries. We're not going to talk about politics. We're not going to talk about religion. We're not going to make racist jokes, whatever the boundaries are. One of the things that came up is, could establishing boundaries actually be antagonistic?
It could be interpreted that way. And so I would say, I think conversation is so transactional. So you would think, I was thinking it might be helpful to have this. What do you think?
Ah, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Instead of being the one who comes in and lays down the law.
right. Yeah, because this is we are transactional beings and we construct our meanings through our transactions. And if we're imposing a dictatorial piece, it will be triggering all sorts of family domino effects.
Right, and especially if you're the this is going to sound awful, but if you're the smartest person in the family and you're the one that comes in and imposes that, or you're the one that they're always making fun of for being that, it's like, oh, here comes Greg, the guy with the PhD, telling us what we're supposed to do. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So I love that. So come in humble, come in
That's,
vulnerable.
humility is the way to go.
Yeah.
And uh, because when you don't, it really impacts the domino avalanches that could be negative, particularly inside families
So,
and
a lot,
organizations.
oh, sorry. And so a lot of what Brian was talking about is, are you struggling to be your authentic self if your authentic self is not humble? And, here you haven't seen your family for a year, and during that year, you've given lectures all over the world, and you won some awards, and you wrote some great papers, and you did some brilliant things, and you learned a bunch of cool stuff. You meditated with great gurus in India, and here you are with your family, and you're really proud of all the stuff that you've done, and you want to be recognized and you want to share it, but that's never going to happen in that room. And so you have to keep that quiet. And, is there this internal struggle of like, I can't be myself with these people?
Well, I I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you can say, you come in and really want to hear their stories, and then you say, I, I would like to tell you something about me. Is that okay?
Again, humility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I have had these experiences and this year that I would like to share with you. Um, and you need to assert yourself because the I world here that we live in a lot is suffocating. And at times they won't, you have to assert yourself to speak your voice. And then you might be refused occasionally, but most often you're not. But to know that you have will and effort here to just say, hey, I would like to say a few things about me too. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And your thoughts made me think about how it's important for me to share my thoughts. Because
Or not, or
yeah,
not share anything about
yeah,
you.
or not, but share what you did. Share what you did that you
Or
might be
not.
proud of, or not.
Because
That's right.
maybe what you did is something they hate. You went to India and lived in an ashram for 3 months,
And you could edit that.
and
But
they're going to hate that.
but you could focus on what you could do. And that's part of the preparation. Like, what would I want to say to these specific people?
And then you're like, maybe the thing that you did, or, you went to volunteer in Gaza and to bring food to people.
Mhm.
And that's something you're so proud of.
Mhm.
It's the greatest thing you've ever done in your whole life, and you want to share that, but that is something politically they would be against. And so you have to compromise yourself so much with that group of people that you can't share it.
And if that's true, you can't share it. And I think it's always good to second guess those things and who you can share with and who you can't. But it becomes a loss issue, and then you
Yes.
have to deal with it like uh, dealing with loss, and then how do I get restoration from that loss? And it's a very uneven process with that.
That's a great point. Then it becomes grief and loss.
Yes.
That's such a great point. Go ahead, Janice, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you for this excellent talk. I was furiously writing notes. I went to a party once and the hostess asked everyone beforehand to make sure that they had something prepared, and she didn't mean food. Everyone had to stand up and either give a poem or a story or a song, whatever it was. So the host could ask about, bring your favorite memory from childhood or a favorite picture or something like that. So I found that idea helpful. And then also I've been at events where the host, every 20 minutes, or in our case, maybe between the dinner and the dessert, everyone had to move 2 seats over. Or maybe she counted everyone off, 1, 2, 3, and all the twos had to move or something like that, just to then be making sure that everyone is participating in a conversation at some point. Because Greg, what you were saying about your cousin was so important, bringing
Oh,
people
thank
in
you.
to engage them.
Yeah, thank you. Introverts have a lot to contribute.
I love the idea of the moving the chairs around. And there's always somebody in the family gathering that nobody wants to sit next to. That and always the seating arrangement, at least in my family, is like, who's going to have to sit next to Virginia? No one wants to sit next to Virginia. And it was always like, and so shuffling people around, that's a great idea to play little musical chairs. And I like what you said too about, you said asking the introverts. I also like the idea of asking the elders to tell a
Yes.
story, because those stories, they might tell you a political story from something from 70 years ago, and that's not going to be as highly charged as a political story
Mhm.
from now. We can be very forgiving for them telling what happened in 1940. Maybe not now, but
No, it's very important to uh, get the history of the elders, particularly. I mean, I always felt that when I was in my 20s, and now I'm not. It's important to bring that in, but some people may, you may need to assert yourself to do that if you are one of the elders, because questions are getting more diminished in social conversation. And that's part of the internet impact of how our technology is actually altering how our social conversations are.
well, and also if an elder today, if your 90-year-old or 85-year-old elder is talking about their life, it's going to touch on political stuff that connects to what's happening today.
It does. It
And
does.
so then it's going to be charged again. They could be talking about Germany or Japan or war,
It's
and
very true.
you're going to be right back in that realm again.
It's very true. Well, it's
So
12:45. Do you want
yeah,
me to end on time?
Bob, how does your time look? Do you want to start on time at 1 o'clock? I imagine you do.
I'm really quite flexible with reference to what you'd like to do on the time.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think that Greg has been generous with us here in providing a lot of framework for us to think about as we enter into our own holiday seasons. And so if he would like to have a little break before the next chapter opens, then having a break may make sense for all of us.
We generally take a 15-minute break right about now, so we should probably do that. But Greg, I just also want to say that I really thank you for the somatic advice, the body work stuff. That's brilliant. That was so important to teach us what to do with our bodies.
Yeah, it is not emphasized enough in different therapies. We need to bring the body into our therapy because it's a very important piece in this. There's interesting research from John Norcross. I'll just end with this for anyone that's in a caregiving role of the importance of massage. And he did a study. It wasn't with control groups, but he did a study of 12,000 therapists and psychologists and found that massage was basically tied with supervision and personal therapy for effectiveness of the counselor.
Makes perfect sense.
And that's the importance of the body.
Yeah, there's a lot of importance of the body on so many levels, even if it's just breath, like you said. Breath is everything. I don't know if you saw my note in the chat, but when you said do this, I wrote, is that why therapists do this?
They probably
stereotype
do.
Of the therapist always sitting like this in their chair?
Yeah, they probably do. But not everyone knows the Herbert Benson piece. When I introduced this in managed healthcare systems, it was often the first time they knew of it. But it's a brilliant one-step method. But yeah, you just unconsciously do this.
To just deal with all the stuff you're taking on from your clients.
Yes.
All right, well, let's take our break now. I'll stop recording. Thank you so much, Greg. That was brilliant as always, and I'm so grateful. And send me your slides and I'll share them with everybody.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you back here in about 10 or 15 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.